Every born-again believer is a leader by virtue, nature of the new birth. We're here, there's leaders on every different level in this room. Some aren't in leadership in our local church. Some are department head leaders. Some are on teams. We're on all different levels of leadership. But the fact is, everyone here is leading someone. It makes a point, says every individual will have the potential to be disloyal. Every leader will be tempted to be disloyal. The enemy knows if he can convince you to be disloyal, he can short circuit what it is God's trying to do through you and through your ministry, and he can stop it right there just by getting you to be disloyal. It goes on to say, every individual will be given the opportunity to be disloyal. Every individual, including an appointed leader, will have an opportunity in which it will seem justifiable, circle justifiable, to be disloyal to the one who trusted him. Leadership is a trust issue all the way around. If you say, well, I don't trust my department head leader, well, what you're really saying is, I don't trust my pastor, because it was pastor's delegated authority given to that department head leader to lead that department. If you say, I don't trust my pastor, what you're saying is, I don't trust God who put my pastor in leadership over this church to lead me. It's a trust issue, and it goes both ways. There's a lot of risk on a leadership side of it for pastor to say, okay, I want you to lead XYZ department, because he just gave you influence. He just gave you an opportunity to persuade people. That's why this this leadership principle is so important. Because if we don't get this desire and this made-up mind to be loyal, we not only cause ourselves a lot of trouble, we can cause the people we're leading a lot of trouble. It said, everyone will have the opportunity in which it seems justifiable. But I know I'm right. I know how I feel. God is talking to me. They must not know all the details. I know this is the right thing to do. And sometimes it seems justifiable when in fact we're probably the one that doesn't have all the details. We're probably the one that's not seeing something. Just because it feels right doesn't mean it is right. In a box there, many innocent lives have lost out with God because an individual or leader betrayed the one he was representing. Understanding that as a leader, as a delegated leader, I represent the leadership above me. In everything I do. I could say, well, okay, as a youth leader, that's all I represent is, the youth group. Well, no. When I'm out in the community and I'm doing business as a carpet layer, I'm representing River of Life Church as a leader in that church. I'm representing my pastor. I'm representing my district. I'm representing my Sunday school team. Everywhere I go, every decision I make, people don't just say, well, it doesn't have anything to do with young people, so we'll just blow that off. He ripped us off on the carpet deal, but no, that happens, they're going to say, oh, I don't know if I want to go to that church. We're always representing the basis or the foundation of the authority. Many people lose out because of the fact that I, as a leader, decide I'm going to be disloyal. I mentioned it a minute ago. Well, all the people that are following me, they may have the loyalty principle down. So if I'm disloyal and they're trying to be loyal to me, what does that make them? In turn, it's going to make them disloyal to the people they should be loyal to. I'm going to lead them in the wrong direction. How does a good man, this is in your notes, how does a good man become a Judas? When you think about that, Judas, one of the men that Jesus himself called out into ministry and put in leadership. Judas, a man that Jesus trusted enough to put him in charge of the finances of the kingdom. Judas, a good man. But that's not what we think about when we think about Judas. Our mind goes to a betrayal. Our mind goes to selling Jesus out to the Pharisees. It goes to 30 pieces of silver. It goes to a man who ultimately hangs himself and commits suicide because he couldn't live with the decisions he made. How does a good man become a Judas? How does disloyalty develop? And how can it be prevented? Most of the time, we're not going to wake up in the morning and you go, you know what? I'm not being loyal anymore. I'm sick of it and I ain't doing it. That's what this lesson is about. How does it develop? Where does it start? How did Judas become Judas? Being honest about its reality is the first step to prevention. And I put in here, honest with myself. I've got to be honest with myself about the reality of disloyalty, about the fact that there is potential for me to be disloyal. I can say, no, I trust my leaders, I'm invested in what I'm doing, and I can fool myself, but that's going to make me vulnerable. We've got to be honest enough to say, okay, there's a possibility, there's a temptation there. I could become a disloyal person if I'm not careful. Ignoring the warning signs will not cause cancer to go away, nor will it prevent disloyalty. If you have all the symptoms and you just refuse to go to the doctor, it doesn't mean that your cancer's healed. It just means that you're overlooking it. If we're going through this lesson tonight and you think, man, I kind of feel that way. That kind of seems like me. I've been there. Don't ignore that. Don't push over it, but address it. Fix it. Make it right. Disloyalty defined. To be loyal is to be faithful to constituted authority. Faithful to those persons, ideas, etc. You can be faithful to a person, but when it says faithful to person or ideas. I had a conversation with a leader, they're actually in this room recently, who would open up and said, hey, listen, I'm great with ideas. I'm going to throw out a lot of ideas, but I want you to know if you don't use my idea, that's okay. I'm going to get behind what you're doing. That makes a night and day difference in a relationship. Because now I don't have to always worry about, oh man, they gave me an idea, I didn't take it. I wonder how they're feeling. And I don't have to worry about, I know their idea was different, or the idea that we went with was different than the one they've given. Are they behind it? We can sit down in a planning meeting and have 15 different ideas from 15 different people. But when we leave that planning meeting, are we all speaking the same idea? Are we all promoting the same goal? Are we all working for the same purpose? Because I could say, well, I could go back to my little groups and I'm leading and say, okay, this isn't what I think we should do, but here's what we're going to do. How excited are those people going to be about that? Wow, okay, we're going to do something that's not a good idea. Woo-hoo. No, they're going to feel the same way. Or I can be big enough to be faithful to the ideas that are cast in a meeting, that are cast by my leadership, and I can say, okay, guys, this is what we're working on. This is what we're doing. And I can share that vision. I can be faithful in that aspect of faithfulness. I skipped that in your notes there. Faithful to the persons, ideas, etc., that one is under obligation to defend or support. I found it interesting that he put that word in there. Are you faithful enough to defend the idea that you didn't necessarily agree with? When someone else says, well, that's a dumb idea, why are we doing it that way? Once the decision's been made, are you faithful enough to defend the idea that you didn't come up with? The idea that maybe wasn't exactly the way you thought about doing it? Because as a delegated leader, as a department head, as a member of the Sunday school team, that's what I got to do. I got to go, no, that's a great idea. This is why that idea is going to work. That's why it's so important not just to catch the mandate, but catch the vision behind it. When a decision's been made, okay, talk to me about it. Tell me why. Tell me what we're doing. And really grab a hold of it so that you can carry it on and explain it to the next person. Betrayal is probably the best synonym for disloyalty. Faithfulness, steadfast, or loyal would be words that are similar. Proverbs 25 and 19 says, confidence And an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. We talked about that a little bit last time we were together. How bad is it when you're in a bad situation, when trouble comes up and you find out that the people you trusted the most weren't there for you. The people you trusted the most were causing some of the issues. Then you got nowhere else to turn. You're all by yourself. It's like a foot out of joint. It's the progress stops. You know, when your foot's out of joint, your progress stops. Your forward momentum slows down. When we're building and we're doing things in the church and we're having revival, and all of a sudden disloyalty springs up, it's like a foot out of joint. We're done. We're limping. We're not walking right. There's a broken tooth. You know, we're not ingesting the things we're supposed to. Stages of development. Stage 1. Disloyalty does not happen overnight. Most of the victims had no desire to be disloyal. Continuing in the notes, the tragic thing is when it finally happens, the one who is betraying is not able to see his or her error. They will usually blame the one they betrayed and justify their own rebellion. Most of the time, if someone's being rebellious or someone's being disloyalty, they're not going, yep, that's what I'm doing, being disloyal. Just the way I'm going to be. No, it's well, you know, I wouldn't have done that except for this happened. Or I wouldn't have done that except for she said that to me. And there's a justification that takes place, an excuse for my disloyalty. When in fact, if we're being obedient to Scripture, my loyalty doesn't really depend on how I'm treated, and it doesn't really depend on the ideas that come from leadership. Look at the example in David's life who's loyal to a king like Saul, who was doing everything wrong. If anyone could have justified disloyalty, it would have been David. But God wanted to teach a principle through His Word that loyalty matters. Most disloyalty begins where there is a strong personal ambition. If you're a leader, you're going to have strong personal ambition. You're going to have some drive. You're going to have some take initiative, get things done attitude. You're going to have, I got the best way to do this. Let's just go. Let's get it done. You're going to have passion invested. If you're a thinker, then you're thinking through things long before you ever speak. So when you give that idea, you've been thinking about it for a long time. When your opinion's finally voiced out, you've mowed it over so many times that if you're not careful, any tweaking or any changing or even rejection of that idea becomes personal. No, that's a good idea. I've been thinking about that idea for 3 weeks. I know that's how we need to do this. That's ambition. That's a good thing to have. The appointed leader is an extension of the one who appointed him. We must not allow our own desires to cloud our motives. Sometimes it can become more about doing what I want to do than doing what's best. Once I have so much energy, so much passion, so much time invested into an idea or a project, it can become more about, I want to do what I started doing. I want to do what I said we're going to do, more than I want to do what's best going to accomplish our goal. Because I've personally got so much into that. I'm ambitious. I'm eager. I want to see my things get done. You know, I want to see my department grow. I want to see this happen. When in fact, it might not help the church as a whole. Symptoms. If you become easily offended because the pastor or the overseer does not accept your ideas, suggestions, or program, caution lights should flash in your mind. And that's where it starts, is in your mind. That's why we're going through this lesson. Lights should go off in my head. If I start getting offended every time I turn around because of this and because of that, then something's got to go off in my head. Because that's where the enemy is going to wage his battle, is in my mind. Oh, I see, they think you're stupid. That they know that'll never work because you won't be able to get it done. And these thoughts start coming in that create disloyalty. And if I'm not careful, the only one fighting in the battle is the enemy. Or I can be intentional and I can put things like this away so that when that comes, I go, no, something's not right here. I know my leader's not like that. I know that person's not like that. Why am I feeling this way? And the caution lights go off and they just get us thinking about things, maybe in a different light than what we already were. Discuss these feelings with your pastor, with your leader, whatever situation fits. My father-in-law often says communication is a beautiful thing when it happens. When it happens. Because it doesn't always happen. Sometimes we take these small offenses that, oh, they didn't like that idea, or they didn't let me do the job I wanted to do. And at first it's not a big deal. So we don't really talk about it because it's not a big deal. But then 3 months down the road, you got 14 little deals that are driving you absolutely insane, and you're so furious that you can't talk about it. So it's better off just to vocalize, man, that really bugged me. I didn't understand that. With the right spirit, with the right attitude, but just, hey, I don't get it. You know, what's going on there? There's probably an explanation that can deal with the issue right there. Instead of getting to that point 3-4 months down the road where you're so irate, you've already become so just fixated and you've spent so much time dwelling on it that you're just beside yourself. Communicate. I don't know how much I want to say about this, but I can remember leaving a meeting with Pastor and being so ticked off. I don't think he knew I was ticked off, but I was. I went home, I was throwing dirty clothes around. I was mad. Because I knew what should have happened, and that wasn't what was happening. Okay? And just being so mad, and knowing that I was so right, and come to find out I was so wrong. Thank goodness I got a good wife that said, maybe you should just take some time and think about that. And I did go back, and we talked about it, and it wasn't a big deal. But what would have happened if I never would have went back and talked about it? What would have happened if I would have just blew up and left it right there? Still be throwing dirty clothes around. No. Communication. Most leaders are not going to have a problem with you coming and saying, hey, I didn't get this. You said this. What'd you mean by that? You know, this is the way I thought we were going, and man, this new plan just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know one leader that's going to say, well, you just need to get your stuff together. No, they're going to explain it to you. Now, come like that. Don't come and say, this new idea is stupid. Well, then they might tell you to go get your stuff together. Come with the right attitude. Every individual or leader has rebellious feelings from time to time. Confession will open the lines of communication and will help to develop trust between the parties. You can trust someone more when they come and tell you, hey, this is the way I feel about it. You know, if this is what we're going to do, let's do it, and let's do it together. But, you know, I didn't agree with it. Okay, fine. Now I know where you're at. Let's move forward. It's going to create open lines of communication. Second stage of development, seeking the praises of men. He says in the notes here, there's a vast difference in needing acceptance and seeking praise. Everybody needs acceptance. Everybody wants to hear an attaboy every now and then. Everybody wants to know they're doing a good job. But when you're actively doing things to try to get people's attention, that's a little bit different. Once a person's personal ambition overrides their submission, they feel a strong need for people to praise their efforts. Man, I'm going to do that when everybody's watching. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go post it on Facebook. You know, our work is for God. So if nobody likes it on Facebook, it was still for God. And I'm all about putting things about working for God on Facebook. I'm just saying, seeking the praises of men. If you got to go around and tell everybody at the church what you did for the church, who are you doing it for? Possibly. You got to consider what you're doing. Consider, am I intentionally going out and trying to find the praises of men? Am I trying to substitute the satisfaction of knowing I'm right with God and working for God with hearing somebody else tell me that I did a good job? Seeking the praises of men, being aggressive about it. This person will usually start by seeking praise from those being led, the ones just under you. For instance, I don't agree with the pastor, but I'm supposed to tell you, blah. You just told that person, your pastor's a moron, but he wants you to know this. That's what you just said to that person. You just betrayed your leader when you make a statement like that. But what you're doing is you're trying to get that person to see, look to me above the past. I'm gonna look out for you so much better. I'm gonna treat you so good. See, I know what's best for you, but that's not what pastor wants you to do right now. There's a lot that goes into that kind of a statement. But you are seeking that praise. You want that person to look to you. You want that person to see it that way in this stage. The question is, how do we stop at this point? Confront. Confront these feelings. Confront these emotions. Confront these thoughts. When God sends someone to confront these feelings, these emotions, these thoughts, receive it. Hear it out. Think through, okay, now that is kind of how I'm feeling. That is kind of what I'm thinking. Why do I feel that way? Why is there a strain in this relationship? Think through it. Try to save. This is from the leadership standpoint, which is another facet that we need to really focus on tonight. Because as leaders, you may have people that are acting disloyal. If you see somebody that's operating like this, as a leader of that person, you have a responsibility to go and in love say, hey, I noticed some things here. There's some stuff going on that just isn't right. You know, when we talk, there's a little bit of tension there. We need to work through this. The key is do it in love. The scripture that comes to mind is love covers a multitude of sins. Well, in this instance, it's not necessarily covers as just pushes down or avoids. It just covers them up, throws a blanket over them. No, it covers it. It takes care of it. It deals with the issue. In a loving way, I can come and I can confront this kind of disloyalty. And through that love and that communication, there can be resolve. And these things can be taken care of. The situation only gets worse beyond this point. The weaker our personal relationship with God, the more we will desire the praise of men. 1 John 12:43 says, for they love the praise of men more than the praise of God. Again, the reference in 1 Corinthians 4:5, therefore judge nothing before the time until the Lord comes, who both will bring to light the hidden things from darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the heart, and then shall every man have praise of God. I would much rather have the praise of God than the praise of man. It means a lot more. Stage number 3. The third stage is in the development of disloyalty is pride. It says in the notes, the Bible never rebuked any sin stronger than that of spiritual pride. In the local church, spiritual pride usually disguises itself as being very spiritual and endowed with great wisdom. Pride will eventually flaunt itself. The leader will continually criticize his overseer on all levels. You know, man, I pray so much. If that leader was more spiritual, we would have way more revival. If they prayed as much as we do, Brother Ron, man, we would be just, boy, would the church be doing good. And this pride starts to well up, and this feeling that I'm better than them. I'm a better leader. I'm a more spiritual person. I'm more in tune with the needs of the department. I'm more in tune with the needs of the church. And it's scary because it's not just a thought at this point, it's a feeling. I believe I am better than that person. I would do a better job. God should have had me in that position. And we start to really feel that way. All the little mistakes and faults of the pastor or the overseer will be pointed out. Going around, yeah, did you see him do that? You notice they did that thing? You know what? If you're going to look for them, they're there. If you're going to look for flaws and little nitpicky things, they're there. You're going to find them. Everyone in this room, anybody not have any faults? Okay. Okay, 3 people are at point number 3. I'm going to write that down. Every single person has problems. So if you think that a fault or a little issue in someone's life disqualifies them from being your leader, you better really consider where you're at. You better hold yourself to a much higher standard. If you're going to criticize every little area of someone else's life, you better be walking a pretty tight line. Because of experiences, good ideas and suggestions must often be discarded or altered. This is from the leader's perspective. You come with a good idea, you come with something that you feel is just 100% ready, and that leader takes it and he changes it a little bit, or maybe gets rid of it completely, and you don't understand. Why would they do that? I know I'd be doing a better job, and then they're going to change the ideas I give them. I'm trying to help them out. Because of experience, they know, well, we tried that before, and, we should have done it like this. So they change it a little bit. Or we tried that before, and it blew up in our face, so we're not doing that again. Spiritual pride becomes very offended at this, and the younger leader or less experienced leader is tempted right then at that point to be disloyal. An individual or leader must distinguish between rejection of his idea and rejection of himself. Just because I don't have the best idea at the table doesn't mean everybody in the group hates me. I might have the best idea next week. Maybe I won't have the best idea next week. That doesn't mean those people don't like me. They have something against me. They just don't want to use my ideas. No, it just probably wasn't the best idea. I'm sorry. Probably what it was. Step number 4. Because pride becomes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall, spiritual blindness is inevitable. It's always safe to think, I could be wrong. It's always kind of safe to think, man, despite how I feel, despite how strongly, despite what I've read, despite what I've heard, maybe I'm wrong. Give the benefit of the doubt. Consider that you're the one missing something. Carnal thinking, carnal actions, and competitive spirit now become a motivator in carnality attacks. Now my flesh is all reared up. I feel like I'd be doing a better job. I'm offended because they're not listening to me, and they're just really driving me crazy. I try to be nice. I try to give them good ideas. I try to help out on the team, and it just always blows up in my face. They never listen to me. And now my flesh is just having a heyday. Carnality attacks. Pride and haughtiness produce spiritual cataracts. Now I really can't see what's really in front of me, because I'm so worked up that there's a clouding of my eyes. There's a blotting. I just can't see the real picture. You ever talk to somebody and they tell you, well, I just don't see it. Well, there are times they just don't see it because they've let it get too far. Many find it difficult to turn around at this point because of their own error. if they've already allowed this pride in, if they've already allowed this bitterness and anger in, and this attack is starting to take place, even if they do realize they're wrong, now I got to go back and admit that I was wrong. That's not easy to do. A lot of people are going to find it hard to turn around. Good news is it's not impossible to turn around. And it's not impossible to help people that are there turn around. You know, most of the time, disloyalty, when we think about it like this, takes place on a larger scale. Like, say, someone's going to be disloyal to pastor. Someone's going to be disloyal to the church. And we, as leaders within the church, are sometimes positioned a lot better to handle it than pastor. And I'll explain that so I don't give anybody the wrong idea. But when he tries to deal with it, he's the one they have a problem with. The church is the one they have a problem with. But when they're talking to Joe and they say, yeah, Joe, this and that, and then blah, blah, blah. Joe says, yeah, I don't really think it's that way, man. Here's kind of what it seems like. They're going to have a lot better ear to hear what Joe has to say because they came to talk to Joe. And when that happens 5, 6, 8 times in the church, and all of a sudden, man, maybe I am wrong. What's going on here? Or we fall in the other way. Yeah, that's a dumb idea, just don't worry about it. Well, we just fed the fire. So when these little issues come up, even if it doesn't seem like a big idea, just take the time to address it. No, that department leader, they're not like that. That's not really the way it is. And deal with it there and help that person out. Stage 5. The disloyal individual gains a following, drawing others to him by pointing out inabilities in the pastor or other leadership. This ties in with what I was just saying. If the pastor were really a man of God, he would preach more love. If he was really where God wanted him to be, there would be more anointing. We would have more miracles, this, that, the other thing. Wonder what he does with all the tithe money. Mostly that'd be in a larger church. Did you notice the way she looked at me, the way he looked at me? Did you see the way they treated me in that meeting? Did you see when we were in, our Sunday school rotation, the way that they treated me? And they start to rally people around them. At first, it's a silent rebellion with smiles, hugs, compliments, and handshakes as they simply ignore the leadership. Well, I'll just come and live for God and do my own thing. And they're here, but they're not here. They're here, but they're proving a point. Silently, smiling, shaking hands with people, gaining a following. People like them, they're good, they're fun to be around, and they're all the while completely ignoring the leadership that God's placed in their life. They may even suggest that they really need to pray for the leader. We really need to pray for them. They need help. This poison has stopped revival and destroyed souls, and in some cases, churches. The same people who are sowing the discord now blame the pastor or the leader for the lack of blessing on the church or other leaders over them for the failure in a particular area of labor. They fail or something goes wrong, and it's not their fault. It's not my fault I failed. It can't be my fault that I failed. If they would have been doing this, then that wouldn't have happened. If that would have been done this way, then our church wouldn't be in this predicament. Step number 6. The next stage is spiritual blindness. Beyond cataracts, now we're blind. Self-deception. If I wasn't right, all these people wouldn't agree with me. Again, that's why we cannot agree with and we can't pass over these kind of attitudes when they come our way. Because we're fueling that. Now if I wasn't right, then they wouldn't agree with me. Everybody in the church feels the same way I do. I hear from God too. I've been praying about this a lot. I'm only trying to help the church out. Sure.
What was the very, very top one underneath? How do we stop at this point, the very first one?
Influencing. Who are the followers who seem to be awed by such leadership? If these people are gaining a following, they're blind to their faults right now, who are the people that are following? Sometimes it's people just like they are. Self-willed, rebellious, angry, bitter. Other times, and this is in your notes, however, some honest, sincere people get caught up in these situations. I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning. That's why delegated authority is so dangerous at times. It's dangerous. We say, okay, you're going to be a life group leader. Okay, then you have 12 to 15 people that you're going to have access to week in and week out. And we've told them that they are to answer to you as a leader. So when you start to get this kind of bitterness and this kind of resentment and this betrayal attitude, now those people are in danger. Those people are in danger. Honest, sincere people get caught up in these kind of things. Well, they are a good person. They're a really good life group leader. They're always praying. They're doing this. They're doing that. And they don't know what to think. Galatians 6:3. For if a man think himself to be something, we all like to hear this, when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. We can't get to thinking too highly for ourselves. Proverbs 18:16 says, a man's gift maketh room for him, and bringeth him before great men. And your gift will take you places, but your integrity is what's going to keep you there. God can bless you, and He can pour gifts into your life, and it will raise you up and put you in places of authority and put you in places of leadership. But with a failure to keep integrity in your life, He can take that stuff away just like that. Your integrity in the things that God has given you, and the abilities and in the gifts that God has given you, is what's going to keep you there. Finally, point number 7. Finally, confrontation is inevitable. Sides are chosen. The disloyal person becomes, in his own eyes, a martyr. Oh, poor me. Doing all this stuff, trying to help out. I'm spiritual. I'm trying to do the right thing. And, the church just won't listen. That leader just won't listen. Sides are chosen. People have to choose. They're forced to choose. Those innocent people that were caught in the middle at this point are forced to choose. Disloyalty becomes an act of spiritual suicide. There's nowhere to go from here. If you're going to be disloyal to this point, what are you going to do? Leave the church? The very thing that God brought you into, saved your soul, you're going to get so bent out of shape about something that you're going to just walk away. Spiritual suicide takes place. How to avoid disloyalty? I want to go through this, and then the Christian life reduced to 7 points I'll let you look at on your own. How to avoid disloyalty. The appointed person or leader can avoid disloyalty if with an honest and humble heart he will keep a check on his motives. Make sure I'm doing what I'm doing for the right reasons. He must watch for the warning signs and confront them when they expose themselves. Now this is you avoiding something in your life. A lot of times we think of confront, we think of somebody else coming in. This says he must watch for the warning signs and confront them when they expose themselves. When I start feeling a way that I know I shouldn't be feeling, when I start thinking something, when I am tempted to do things that I know aren't right, I've got to confront those. Haley would just get beside herself a few years ago, and she would want to stop pitching a fit, but I remember one night her laying in bed, and she just literally, I can't stop, and she's flailing, and she wanted to stop, but she couldn't. And I spanked her, and I put her on her bed, and I did this and that and the other thing, and it wasn't working. And really what it came down to is I had to teach her, Haley, you can stop. You got to say, self, I'm going to sit on this bed and stop crying. Self, and that's what we got to do sometimes. Self, I'm not going to have that kind of attitude. Self, I'm not going to talk bad about that person. Self, I will not stab them in the back. I will not neglect my responsibilities to make them look bad. Self, I will not say that. We got to take control and we got to confront these things personally. I got to deal with me sometimes. I can't wait for somebody else to come along, because usually by the time someone else sees it and comes along, I'm way further in the process. If I can deal with it myself, I can nip it in the bud. Pastors and other leaders must remember that kindness and gentleness are not signs of weakness. Spend time with and share with those you lead your heart and your vision. From the leadership side of things, if you got people that are vulnerable to this, make sure they understand why you're doing what you're doing. Help them out. Try to point some things out to them. Being kind, being gentle, being loving towards someone, even when they're not treating you right, is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of incredible strength. Honor them for their efforts. Hey, man, you did a really good job. We could probably change a few things, but thanks for trying. Thanks for the effort. Here's what went well. Celebrate things. Teach them their potential danger in leadership and encourage them not to allow power, position, or authority to negatively affect their spirituality. That's what we're doing right now. Because if I don't know some of these things, then they can creep in a lot easier. But if it's on the tip of my mind, if I've already been taught, then when it comes up, well, I know what this is. So we got to teach people. Give new converts, and I'll throw in renewed backsliders, time to grow and mature as Christians. As team leaders, when people are coming into church and they're brand new, we want to plug them in. We want to find things for them to do almost right away, but we're going to work them into any kind of leadership. You know, you can't just pull somebody right in. They're excited, man, they're living for God. It's been like 3 weeks. Hey, you want to preach next week? No, there's got to be a maturing that takes place. And I know that's an extreme example. You apply it to your department. Every department, man, we see new talent, and we're like, I got to get them before anybody else does. I want them on my team. Well, there has to be a maturing process. There has to be time for them to get their feet wet. Well, they've been living for God. They've just been away for a while. Well, even more so. I got to make sure they got some stick-to-itiveness here. It says, Jesus prayed all night before choosing his leaders and spent 3.5 years teaching them. When Jesus told the 12 that one of them would betray him, each one asked, "Is it I?" They were humble enough. Surely not me. No, not me. They were just arguing who was going to be the greatest. And Jesus says, somebody's going to betray me. Wow, is it me? Check myself. Constantly check myself. Am I right? If things don't go my way, wow, is my heart right? Is something going on here? They were humble enough to say, "Is it I?" And then it says there also is this potential alive in me. Not just, is it I? Am I the one? But, man, is that there? Would I do that later on down the road? We asked the question in the beginning, how does a good man become a Judas? And says you're only a failure if you don't get back up. Now, Judas's betrayal was a little different, but there's also Peter. Peter, who stood there at a time when he could have helped Jesus, when he could have spoke up. You know, hey, yeah, I know him. He's a good man. He didn't do those things you're talking about. And he denied Christ 3 times. We know the story. The difference is Peter preached the first message of salvation. Judas hung himself because Judas didn't get back up. Judas got too caught up in where he was, and he couldn't focus on where he was going. But if I'm humble and I got the right attitude and the right spirit, any one of these points can hit me, and I go, wait, I don't want to be here. I don't want to end up dangling from the end of a rope. I don't want to end up spiritually dead because I allowed pride to ruin me. I want to be right, and we can turn around, we can go the right way.